talking about urban migration. So a lot of people who work in Klang Valley will go back to their respective areas and vote. And like you said just now, the media has been saying that 20-25% in Kelantan, for example, they are from KL. They're going to go back from KL, the Klang Valley, back to Kelantan. And if you can get that 20-25% of votes, it's going to have a big swing. Do you think that's the case, whereby the issues being talked must be a bit federal, while at the same time not neglecting the state local issues, because you are targeting both sides of the spectrum now?
I think we see very much the trend of the parties needing to target both federal and state. Traditionally, I mean PAS, right, which has control over Kelantan, would talk a lot more about values, Islamic state and so on. But this time they've issued a statement saying that PAS doesn't just look at that. PAS looks at broader national issues, at the economy, at corruption, at crime. So I think there's an awareness that they need to look at national issues as well. But at the end of the day, I do think that it's still about local state development.
But the thing about urban migration is that people will bring back ideals. And people in the rural areas, when they make benchmarks, they will benchmark themselves against people living in the urban areas. Yes, we have values being espoused and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, I want to have better jobs. I want to move to better housing areas and have better facilities, for example. Do you think the issues of development that's been talked about a lot since a lot of elections will still hold sway as the key indicator? Because you have the STAR report which is that 30% of voters still look at the economy, and that's the single largest one issue that concerns the voters in Malaysia.
Yeah. Definitely development is one of the key issues. If you look at various surveys, things that people look as important would be their career, job opportunities, and the economy, right? And that's why people flock to the urban areas. So in 2020, for example, 75% is projected to live in urban areas. So maybe we should talk about the many corridors that the Prime Minister has introduced.
Do you think that will have an impact on this election? Because I've had experts here who say that yes, it can, but information needs to be given out more. And since your expertise in public policy, do you think it has been disseminated well?
I think in the south it has, on the Iskandar development region, but because the other two corridors, the north and the east, were launched much later, so there hasn't been enough movement to actually validate the issue being brought down to the people.
Political parties will use this campaign period? We have a longer time this time.
Yeah, that's right. 13 days.
Do you think it will be used to explain all these economic regions well?
I think they should, if they want to take advantage of it. Unfortunately, as you yourself said, information is still scarce.
Because it is about the economic region, it's about bringing development to the ones that have not been exposed. So minimizing the gap between the rich and the poor, the well-educated and the less educated. It's a good strategy, but at the same time, if you don't talk about it well, the opposition will capitalize on that.
I think it's an important aspect to focus on, since the Prime Minister has already spent so much money in launching it and so on. But at the same time, I still think that the government still needs to focus on a very broad sort of macroeconomic policy issue, things which actually drive growth. So not just within the rural areas, but how do you develop the centres which already exist?
If we were to see it between rural and urban, the rural areas where you have Felda settlers, for example, prices of commodity has gone up, way up. You know, you got 1,500 ringgit price, then over a few months you have 3,000 over ringgit, and this has seen, you know, a big jump in income for people in these areas. Do you think this will also hold sway in influencing the vote for this election, because the rural areas has been having it good in that particular aspect?
Traditionally, again, the rural areas have always been very supportive of Barisan Nasional, and I think this will impact their vote even more in terms of showing their allegiance to the government.
So you think the swing vote will largely happen in the urban areas?
The swing votes will be in the urban areas, but even then, we still need to consider several layers. So first layer will be urban-rural. Second layer, more importantly, is the ethnic lines, and then number 3 is the party. So we focus on and analyzing them one by one.
I've read the Edge Daily, I've read the Star, I've read the NSD, all the papers here that have analysis of the election, and a lot of the experts quoted seems to agree that Barisan would still have 2/3, but where urban area is concerned, there's going to be some shift. MCA and Gerakan is going to lose about maybe 8 to 12 seats. That's what they've been predicting.
Right.
Do you agree on that?
I think at most about 10 to 11 seats.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think MCA and Gerakan might actually lose some seats in this election.
So the sophisticated voters are going to have that
Still,
little bit of change, empathy
That's
towards the
right.
opposition.
Right.
Do you think that's because of ethnic consideration or because of current issues globally and locally?
I think it's a combination of factors. I think at the end of the day, it boils down to current issues. So it's a combination of current issues plus the ethnic lines. So you have, like I said just now, the economy, inflation, corruption, crime
But
rate.
if it's well explained in the 13 days, do you think that can push the expectation back?
Possibly. In fact, the comparison between like November last year and December last year, the Chinese improved their perception of how government is handling it slightly, maybe like 1 or 2 percentage points, but still very much lower. But if they see stability post Hindraf, post Bersih in the earlier, September, October, November months, then if the stability continues, we might see them changing their minds over the 13 days.
It's always the fence hitters and the silent majority.
Right.
So thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank
and
you.
I'm sure you will be on the show again because there's a lot of niche areas within your areas, public policy studies and stuff for us to discuss. But for today, that's it. If you have any idea or maybe criticism and suggestions, please send them to Analisis, ANALISIS at astro.com.my so that we can follow up on them and maybe even call you to the show if your ideas are good to talk and give your views on the election for this time around. But for this edition of Analysis,